What's the biggest mistake people make in cold email outreach?
They send the same template to everybody. Still happens a lot. And we're going to see the death of templates. And the reason why we're going to see the death of templates is because Google and Microsoft use their own models to associate essentially spam reports with static content. So essentially templates are dying.
Interesting. Does spin tax get around that for now? And are they kind of cutting down on that too? Kind of the variations of the template?
That's becoming less and less effective because LLMs are becoming smarter and smarter. So where we're headed in the world is essentially getting to a world where every email in cold email is unique when it's actually being sent out. So that means it will be computed by something like DeepSeek.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ignite podcast. Today, we're thrilled to have Frank Sondors on the program. He's the co-founder and CEO of Salesforge, which is an AI-powered sales platform revolutionizing outbound email deliverability and personalization. Very cool stuff. With a decade of experience in B2B sales, Frank has been at the forefront of solving one of the biggest challenges in outbound sales, getting emails delivered and read. Under his leadership, Salesforge has skyrocketed to millions of ARR in just under a year. So we're excited to hear that journey and hear how he's changing the landscape. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you've been in B2B sales for a long time. I come from B2B sales. I built a lot of MarTech, tech sales tech. I was at Conversica back in the day, building a chatbot that followed up with sales leads. What initially drew you into the space?
Good question. So, as you mentioned, I've been in sales for over a decade, and initially as an IC, so an individual contributor, and then in my last gig, I had a sales team of 50. And then this is where I had essentially the epiphany moment around the fact that in the sales-led company, typically the main lever to target attainment was just hiring a bunch of reps. So you typically sit down with your CFO in a seed, Series A stage company, and you look at your conversion rates, and you're like, hey, this is the pipeline number that we need to hit. So this is the revenue target that we need to hit. This is how many SDRs or account execs that we need to hit the target. And I think back in the days, growth at all costs was, the name of the game, but efficiency is the name of the game. I think as we go into the future, especially coupled with LLMs and how they have evolved over time, and also naturally with the AI agents, etc. So that's something that we do as well. And I think at similar revenue levels that I was in the company with a sales team of 40, 50 individuals. Right now, I only have a sales team of 3 individuals doing comparable revenue levels. And just kind of to give you an idea, and I know a lot of businesses out there, a lot of them that we power as well, where they essentially figure out multiple ways how to become essentially leaner and meaner, not just in sales, but also in other areas of the business like finance, etc. And I think we are already seeing a lot of that in the US. We're seeing some of that in Europe, but definitely, a lot of folks have the appetite to reduce headcount. But to reduce headcount, you kind of need to solve what I call the baseline problems like email availability, making sure that emails don't land in spam, etc. Because what's the point of even using any form of automations or AI, etc., if the prerequisite, meaning emails landing actually in the primary, doesn't actually happen. So that's how we initially started our business back in the days, which is about 20 months ago or so. And we quickly scaled. We scaled to about $1 million actually, just with the 3 co-founders. So my 2 co-founders, one of them is works in the back end, second one of course in front end. That was just a sales guy. And then at $2 million in the year, actually, we had nobody in marketing, nobody in sales, nobody in customer success. We did hire already a bunch of engineers at that point, and a lot of people in support. And then after post $2 million, $2 million in ARR, we started to hire aggressively the whole go-to-market team. So customer success, sales and marketing. We're kind of, are going to be accelerating that this year. But yeah, back in January last year, there were just 3 co-founders. Right now, we have 37 employees. Having more employees is definitely not the way to measure success these days. So we definitely are looking also at ways how to reduce headcount, whether that's using something like N8N automations or make.com automation that you can implement within your org to kind of reduce the pressure of hiring, folks to do repetitive things. Yeah, we're all about kind of being very lean and mean, being aggressive and using our own agents to scale, but also using other forms of essentially agentic capabilities to ultimately reduce cost and essentially maximize the output of the business.
That's interesting. So much to unpack there. One thing I want to drill into is sort of the bootstrapping to your first $1 million of ARR. Did you guys raise money to get to that first $1 million, or is that completely bootstrapped?
No, to about $1 million in ARR. So we did bootstrap, and then we decided to raise $500,000. We thought we're going to burn cash but actually that never happened. So it was a bit of a waste in a way, you could say that. But there's also other benefits naturally that the angels and the VCs that got on board actually bring to the table. Yeah, we're first-time founders actually ourselves, so we never ran a business in the past, and we also thought to ourselves, maybe it's better to raise, the first time round, and next time, we can go fully bootstrap. But as I said, there's a lot to do. There's a lot to build, and we thought, definitely, if there is a path, if this is a VC case, we should be raising the money, and we did. But yeah, we didn't put it to use, unfortunately, and we're still not burning cash. We're still profitable, even though we already have 37 people in the business.
Yeah, I'm seeing this a lot more in the founders I meet, right? Because some founders will reach out to me because I'm a pre-seed and seed investor, and they'll go, yeah, we got this great idea. Here's our deck. And I'm like, great. What's revenue? 0. I'm like, great. Come back when you have some revenue. They're like, it's too early for us. And they're like, I thought you were a pre-seed investor. I'm like, I am. Pre-seed means like you probably bootstrapped it, or maybe got a friends and family around and got some revenue, right?
Mm.
And so that's what I look for as an investor. But I'm seeing more and more of it. These 2 or 3 founders getting to $1 million of ARR, then raising. It's almost like a return to venture capital, how it was 30 years ago. I think, all the AI and the tools and let's back up and talk about what the mission of Salesforge and kind of what your aha moment was when you guys founded it and why you guys did it.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I had a huge sales team, and it was growth at all costs, literally. And we did grow quite nicely. So sales was the main engine, was the biggest team in the company as well back then. And in this company, it's slightly different. The largest team is actually probably the engineering team. But yeah, as I mentioned, so the epiphany moment was around the fact that really the main lever actually was to just hire a lot of salespeople. That was the only way to increase output. Everything else that we would do, like change the sales stack or the process, like the process was already very much optimized. And it was just, all about hiring more people. And that's because back in the days, you didn't have the LLMs and the agentic abilities in many
You shouldn't have
things.
all this sales automation that you could utilize, right? And so like in order to get more sales, you had to have more people.
Yeah, and the problem was that if you look at all the big guys in the space, not going to name them, but they all have built their software around essentially bigger teams. This is how the software was also designed. They would also charge you per seat, and essentially, the bigger the team, the more revenue you used to make as a company. But that's not the case anymore. If you look at the smartest team, the leanest team, the teams or companies that are actually profitable, if you look at their headcount, you can clearly see that a lot of them have managed to reduce their headcount significantly. Or as well, you also seeing companies out there where revenue just keeps going up and up, but actually the headcount is flat. This is fantastic. Why? This is great. Not needing to hire more people, right? And I think we're going to see more of that as we progress. And I think anybody else that's kind of baking a lot of headcount into the scaling, these are not the companies that I would personally invest in. I definitely want to see things going up, but headcount being sort of flat, right? Or actually slightly reducing. That would be fantastic. That's the sort of companies that, for example, when I invest also as an angel, I'm also looking into companies like that.
You're looking for capital efficiency, basically, is how we think about it in our framework. And it used to be, I think good capital efficiency is like, I'm going to raise a couple million and go get a couple million of ARR. Where you don't want to be is like, I raised a couple million, burnt a couple million, and now I have 500K of ARR or 250K of ARR.
Yeah.
That now you're talking about 1 to 4, 1 to 8 kind of ratios of burn multiple, and this is not good.
Yeah, but I think it's a lot more difficult to get to those numbers these days, simply because there's just so much SaaS out there, right? Typically, you're building a SaaS company, so there's just so much SaaS out there. And then, yes, you would raise a couple of million back in the days, and then you would get to a couple of millions in ARR. But these days, it's pretty difficult to get to a couple million in ARR with all the competitors out there. You also have to be watchful what Google does, what Microsoft does, and they all can kill easily whole software categories out there as well. Yeah, and it's much, much tougher out there. But still, you see a lot of these crazy AI companies that get to millions and millions of dollars in ARR literally within weeks as well today. So there's definitely opportunity in the market, and with all the stuff that's happening in AI, I'm super excited, to be honest. It doesn't feel like it's like the crypto wave, right? You're not sure what you're investing in. Here it's kind of clear, right? So it's back, back in AI exists just generally, for a very, very long time. Back in the days, the old AI, which still exists today, is machine learning. So I used to sell machine learning as SaaS, back in 2017, 2018, when I joined a company called BlackRow. And this is where actually a lot of inspiration, by the way, came in to build Salesforge, which is essentially predicting, for example, when an email should be sent. You can predict things like that, right, with a lot of data. And we do a lot of that actually behind the scenes. And today it's all about Gen AI, right, which is the sexy new thing, and kind of all that. A lot more popular with ChatGPT and stuff like that. But yeah, now the cost is sort of massively reducing over time. And you look at companies like DeepSeek popping up from China, and I bet there'll be more LLMs popping up from China that will be giving a hard time to a lot of LLMs in the US and Europe. And that's exciting because the fact that you're able to reduce the cost so low, it unlocks so many more possibilities in the world of Gen AI, and naturally we can also pass on the savings to our customers. That's one thing, but the other thing is you can just simply do a lot more that you wouldn't be able to do so due to the cost.
Yeah, it's almost like the cognification of our economy, right? Like, I guess the best corollary is probably like cheap ubiquitous internet or cheap ubiquitous electricity that kind of permeates our lives, and it becomes standard to just have. When you have cheap electricity, you could electrify whole factories in your house, and you can have washing machines and things like that. And, with the internet, like, okay, of course, I'm going to have like all this information flowing around and video streaming and video chats and what we're doing right here, this podcast, ubiquitous bandwidth, right? And now, like, with this cognifying of our economy, cheap agentic, reasoning AIs that can do tasks. So it reasons that like more tasks than ever will be done.
Yes.
And every nook and cranny of every human problem will be solved with AI. A thousand flowers will bloom is kind of like the refrain that you hear on X.com these days. But back to Salesforge, like exactly what are you guys doing? What problem are you solving? Who's it for? For people out there listening, I bet there's lots of founders that listen to this podcast that are like, okay, yeah, tell me, how can I use Salesforge to, beef up my outreach efforts and get to 1 or 2 million of ARR very quickly?
Yeah, so typically folks start to think about us when they don't want to hire people, so that's where we come in quite nicely. And within Salesforge, which is our mothership product, we have other products as well. We can go into that later, why we've done that to ourselves. We have 4 brands, 4 softwares, 4 websites, but the main one is called Salesforge. So Salesforge is where the execution happens. So for now, we do everything that has to do with email, and we have what we call 2 paths in that software. One is what we call the human paths, and within the human path, can execute email campaigns. You can send these what we call unique emails to every single individual in any language. And the uniqueness within the emails, so when we do the computation, we'll look at what do you sell as a business, essentially what's your value prop, and you can have multiple in different languages. And we combine that piece of data together what we call with prospective buy data. So what do we know about that particular individual based on publicly available data? So for example, on the website or LinkedIn URL, X, or even checking whether we had any conversation in the past within the CRM. And then we do the computation on top of that, on top of these 2 data sets. So we do that programmatically at any scale. And so yeah, there's the human path. And then if you're lazy or you don't have time to do, top of the funnel sales, right, and generating pipeline, or you just simply don't know what you're doing, when it comes to outbound, you should be probably using the second path that we have, which is the agentic path. And that path, there we have an agent called Agent Frank, named after me. I've been in sales for a decade. I decided, let's name the first agent after me. And there'll be also other names, but at least, there's a bit of a story there. And then what Agent Frank does, it does actually pipeline building fully autonomously. And so you have to just enter your ICP. So what's the ideal customer profile that you're going after? Then Agent Frank can source data across multiple databases out there, or can use your own data, say from your CRM. And then again, it will send uniquely computed emails based on the same logic that I already described. It will actually compute 3 unique emails. So there's a couple follow-up emails, then it sends those out. If the prospect ever replies back to you, then literally within a few minutes, it will reply back to the prospect, and it's optimized typically for a goal. There are 2 sets of goals. Either one goal, which is we want to book a meeting, so you can hook up your calendar link, HubSpot calendar link, etc. You can ask maybe also from the prospect for their calendar link. So essentially, we want to book meetings, right? So that's one type of goal. But the second type of goal is you can essentially ask the agent so that a click-out event happens essentially onto the website. Some people don't want to have any meetings whatsoever. I don't know, let's say you're a PLG business, and let's say, in our case, right, we're heavy PLG business, meaning product-led growth is how we acquire customers and how we do things. And there we may want to essentially make sure that there's a click-out event that happens onto our sign-up page, for example, right? Or a particular landing page, like an demo page, whatever it is. Some companies run it in tandem. So essentially they onboard their sales team, or you're just a founder, you do your own thing, and then the AI agent does its own thing as well. And we see companies doing that. So we're big believers, essentially what we call in blending or augmenting, essentially, because in that way you can maximize pipeline coverage that you're generating for your business and minimize costs on average. So we don't believe that either one approach or the other approach is the ultimate approach. For the most sophisticated companies, there is still always a place for humans. So I'll give you an example. Let's say in the US, it's illegal to do any form of AI cold calling. You can only do that with humans today. And actually, there's other benefits that the typical human brings to
Meaning
the
like a
game,
telemarketer calling you, trying to sell you something over the phone, like a vacation package, a timeshare or something like that. You can't use AI for that.
No, so you can only use AI calling when the user has opted in to be reached out by you. Then yes,
Wow.
these are
Wow.
inbound AI.
Because we have another portfolio company, CollectWise. He's been on the pod, that uses AI to do outbound debt collection, which is a form of opt-in. Like you're in debt to us.
Yes.
And so, yeah, we're calling you to collect that debt.
So that's
and they're
fine.
doing really, really well.
Yes, that is totally fine. Yes, because yes, but kind of cold. No, that's
Interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that that was a law.
Voice agents as well, but predominantly for like inbound use cases. So things like you sign up on the site, and then the agent will call within a 15-minute SLA, say, and we'll have a chat. And that's
so
most fine, right?
most of your customers then are kind of these enterprise B2B software or businesses that need to sell to other businesses.
So yeah, definitely B2B, typically up to 50 employees or so. That's our sweet spot for now, at least. Typically, it's a tech company, you're VC backed, and you need to scale aggressively, and you're looking for new piece of tech. And in a lot of cases, Salesforge pops up out there. So we're definitely on the radar for a lot of companies. And then
that's amazing.
The other ICP, typically this has to do with sort of outbound agencies, growth agencies, lead gen agencies. They have all different names, but they all do the same thing, which is generating pipeline for their customers, right? And their customers could be Fortune 500 companies, startups, whatever that is, right? And these are two typical ICPs. Most of the clients are in the US, 70% or so, and the rest are typically from Europe. But yeah, we just do pipeline, trying to generate as much pipeline as we can with the lowest possible headcount, and doing so what we call with the highest probability. So we're also using a lot of what we call big data behind the scenes, and there's a lot more of that we're going to showcase later this year. But yeah, we're also big believers that there's a lot of decision making that happens by humans when you're doing the reach out, which actually has a negative impact on the company and the sales pipeline performance. So we're looking to transition a lot of human decision-making over to passing that over to essentially big data. So think of it essentially like Google and running Google Ads campaigns. Let's say within Google Ads campaigns, back in days, you only used to have these sort of campaigns that used to run on manual bidding. So humans used to make decisions what sort of bids they should put in place, and you can still run those. But a lot of the campaigns today in Google Ads are essentially what's called automated campaigns. So essentially, a lot of these campaigns run based on big data behind the scenes that Google has access to help customers to maximize conversions at a particular CPA, so cost per acquisition. So we're looking kind of go into that realm as well. We're essentially, the way we look at it, we're building sort of a Google Ads account for outbound, essentially, where you're sort of combining these humans and the agents in one place, just like in Google Ads.
Yeah. And so basically, you guys set up cold outbound emails that are super targeted and personalized to build pipeline for B2B companies. And, there's lots of providers. This is a crowded space. Like you said, this is very competitive, right? And marketing's just, MarTech's always been really competitive. And, we have other portfolio companies that do exactly the same thing, actually. Fiverr comes to mind, for out of YC.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, and then there's lots of tools out there, like there's Instantly that comes to mind off the top of my head. How do you differentiate across all these tools and providers that are do roughly the same thing? You got Clay, right? And then Clay ties to things, and yeah.
Great companies, yes. Like, we're definitely big fans of Clay ourselves. We have an integration with Clay. So when you're a super crowded space, you definitely want to have sort of a unique positioning in the market. So fun fact, we actually are, in our category, we are the fastest growing software in the first 12 months. We grew faster than Instantly or any other competitor. So typically our main competitor, or one of the main competitors definitely is somebody like Instantly for sure. But unlike kind of building the way I would describe a point solution, so you're just building this one thing, we actually build multiple things. It's a bit like ecosystem. So we're building like a Microsoft suite of apps. So we build very aggressively, actually. We build very fast. And so, within a year, we already have 4 brands, 4 softwares, 4 websites, etc. And we were just about to roll out another one in about a month's time. So essentially, we're going to market typically with an ecosystem of software. So it's not just about the execution and the sending. It's also about other things. So you typically also need to essentially have the email infrastructure also in place. So we do that as well. We have 2 products just for that. We're also going to be rolling, the next Forge that we're rolling out, for example, is the Data Forge. But essentially the way we think about...
Interesting. So all the brands have Forge in the name?
Yes.
I love that. That's cool.
Yes. So if somebody is a Forge on the internet, it's most likely me. So another Forge is coming out in a month's time. And then we already have like a roadmap of another 5 Forges over the next 2 years. So we're definitely going to get to about 10 Forges in total. And they all have to do, they all essentially all about one thing, which is building sales pipeline. That's all it is.
Yeah, because fundamentally, like a business just builds things and sells things, right? And so you're basically helping these businesses sell things, which is great.
Yes.
And when you say pipeline, what you really mean is like qualified leads that are booked to basically sales meetings,
Yes.
Right?
Correct.
It's kind of like somebody raised their hand and said, I'm interested in your product, and I will take a meeting to hear about it. I'll take that 15 or 30-minute meeting so I can learn more about it. That's pipeline.
Yes.
And then after that first call, that SDR maybe, is it typically SDRs with your clients, or is it going straight to account execs now?
We go straight to account execs. So a lot of account execs actually use our software, especially the autonomous capabilities to build more pipelines. So a lot of sales orgs don't even have SDRs. So the account exec does a full sales cycle. But to help them to build that pipeline, they definitely looking at sort of autonomous pipeline building capabilities out there. A lot of them.
Now, is that because AI is sort of eating the kind of the SDR stack at this point? And
yes.
It's basically generating qualified leads that account execs would normally get handed by an SDR that was doing all the crazy cold outbound, right? Just sending cold emails all day long, qualifying those leads, and then shooting them over to account execs, basically.
Yes, but naturally, reps do that across also LinkedIn and a cold call, right? So as I said, it's illegal to be using any form of agentic capabilities for cold calling, but the email,
not cold emailing,
is still legal, and that is possible.
Yeah.
So there's
when I say I meant cold emailing, not cold calling.
Yeah. So I mean,
Did I say cold calling? Yeah.
Yeah. So cold calling is illegal for the agentic stuff. For email and LinkedIn, you can definitely do that. So this is why there will be always a place for humans. But as I said, I'm a big believer in kind of blending.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why do I have these 3 sales individuals in my team? That's because they do a lot of cold calling, they do a lot of different other things that an AI agent just can't.
I need and we looked at a company in YC recently that did this, but I need the antidote to this, right? Which is, as a VC, I get cold emailed all day long from startups raising money, right?
Yeah.
And I know they're using probably some platform like Salesforge, right? Or similar, because it's like the same kind of format. And I'll ask, I'll be like, hey, what did you use for this cold email? Because I know it's like this cold outreach, personalized. Hey, Brian, I saw that you back B2B software startups, and it's like totally scraped from my LinkedIn or some online profile. But what I need the antithesis to this, which is like, I need the agent to go, what kind of email is this? And then it's a cold outreach for a startup trying to raise money for me. Do this, because so much of my day is just like, and it's funny, I have all these like keyboard shortcuts set up on TextBlaze, which shout out to TextBlaze. I love that tool. It's a Chrome extension, and like it has all these like programmable 2-letter shortcuts. So it's like / founder form is like one of them. So when I get a cold outreach, I go /FF, and it's like, hey, thanks for reaching out. Fill out this form. I'll take a look. But I need AI to do that, right? Because I think we're entering this world where, and it's emerging right now, and it's not quite in place. Agents talking to agents, right? Because what you guys are building is a sales agent that builds pipeline, and I need like an email assistant agent that can counteract that, right? Because on one side you have marketing ruining everything, as it always does, which is, it's just like agentic reach out, right? It's flooding our inboxes with better and better cold emails, which are great. Like a lot of them are like, yeah, I'll take a look at your startup for sure. But it's also like, hey, I can't look at 50 startups a day that get cold emailed to me. So now I need to use AI to weed through that. You know what I mean? And I don't think we've gotten to the other side of this yet. I'd love to get your thoughts on all this.
Good question. Actually, we're going to be building agentic capabilities also on the buyer side, but not yet. So ultimately, we want to improve what we call the buyer overall experience. So we're building, first of all, tech on the seller side, and then we're going to start building stuff on the buyer side. And the reason why we're doing that is so that we have ultimately data on both sides, on the seller side and on the buyer side. And by having the essentially data on both ends, you're actually able to improve things. You're actually able to know, whether you're interested in this stuff or not, right? And things like that, essentially to eliminate sending emails to those people that are not looking for the stuff that you're offering, right? So how do you do that? Well, you do need to have access to the buyer's data. So yes, we will be building stuff on the buyers end to protect their essentially inboxes, but B, essentially only delivering the stuff that's actually of interest to them. And yes, using agentic abilities, whatever, to only surface those emails that align with business pains and priorities of that company, and essentially eliminate everything else. So yes, we will see a lot more sort of processing happening also on the buyer's end. But ultimately, yes, we're headed to a world where, due to inefficiencies in humans communicating with each other, you start spinning up agents, and then they're going to be having a chat between each other to see whether if there's even an opportunity, and only then the seller and the buyer will be flagged. So yes, I do see that sort of reality, and actually it's great. I think I also get a lot of cold emails, a lot of them also land in spam, etc. And I'll give you an example. So, for example, there was this one guy who became our head of YouTube in the end. He sent me an email from one of our competitors. He was using the tool. It landed in spam and said, "Hey, it looks like it landed in spam. Here are some tools that I'm working on that you could use to improve your deliverability." So then he became a customer of the Forge, and then in the end he became an employee as well. So now he's running our YouTube channel.
Nice.
There are definitely opportunities in those emails, but yes, if your mailbox is bombed, yes, you need something like an AI agent, because a lot of people don't have the time to read through those emails, but would engage in the emails that are of priority to their business. But how do you get to that? Especially some people get like 100 cold emails a day. That's a lot of emails, and nobody has the time to read through those. That's why, yes, there are already tools out there in the market that do scan through emails and only surface those emails that are potentially relevant to you and your business.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to learn about those tools, because I'm hitting email overload myself, and I'm an inbox zero kind of guy. So it's starting to get to the point where I can't get to inbox zero because my email's floating around in so many places. So it's just easily findable on the internet, and which is great. Founders can find me, but also, I think I'm hitting email saturation. This episode of the Ignite podcast is brought to you by our friends at Build, spelled BYLDD. Build is a development agency that specializes in helping early stage startups, especially non-technical founders and teams, build and launch scalable revenue-generating software products. Most startups don't have $100K to hand over to a big agency, and honestly, for your first product, you probably shouldn't. Sure, you could try rolling the dice on some freelancers, but that's a gamble with unclear costs and a lot of project management headaches and no guarantees. That's where Build comes in. For just $10K in about a month, Build can turn your validated idea into a real product that's ready to go to market. It's a smart, efficient way to build a foundation for a company of any size. And yes, companies that start with Build can and have scaled very large. Their clients have gone on to be backed by YC, Y Combinator, and Google, and raise funding at multi-million-dollar valuations. Ready to get started? Head over to build.com. Again, that's BYLDD, to connect Ayush and the team and let him know you heard about Build on the Ignite podcast.
I bet you want a tool that would also qualify those founders, right?
Yes. Well, I just need a tool that basically acts almost like an executive assistant, right?
Yes.
So you got the executive assistant reading every email and then only bubbling up, starring the ones I should review, basically.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's, you could create, a quick agent for this particular niche, so for,
for VCs, basically.
Too many emails with too many decks, and you're not really sure whether you should be looking at this or not. And this is why people like you typically skim through the slides like 20, 30 seconds. That's all you have. That's all you have in terms of the time, right? If something piques, an interest, then you will
Yeah.
that. But otherwise,
well, I use AI now to prioritize it, because I get, probably 40, 50, 60 outreaches per day. And so I'll actually have my assistant will read through a lot of stuff and send them to the form. And then I'll use AI, very simple AI, to prioritize the form submissions. So I know like what the cream of the crop is. I'll eventually get to everything, but sometimes it could take weeks for me to review someone's deck, unfortunately. But the AI will prioritize and say, hey, this one's actually really good. This is like A tier, basically. It's actually just 5-point scale. So this is rated very highly according to the AI, and I should look at it right away. And this is rated very poorly. And every once in a while I get something wrong. And then I'll just kind of do some prompt engineering around that API call on Airtable and go, oh, okay, like you got this wrong and here's why. And now it'll bubble up correctly in the future. And I've been doing that now with probably over 1,000 submissions. So I've got it kind of fine tuned, but now I need to do that for my inbox. So I've done it for the pitches, but I haven't done it for my inbox. How do you guys price it? Like I'm a startup looking at this. I want to build pipeline. How do I get started? And what does it typically cost?
So on average, a user pays us about $130 or so a month.
That's pretty
Business,
affordable
not a
to
user.
get going. Yeah. Yeah.
So that means, because we're not about more humans, so definitely we don't charge per seat. So it's unlimited use essentially that you would typically hook up to the Forge. What we do charge for is what we call the consumption of the software. So if something costs us money to operate, we would actually mark it up, and that's it. That's how the consumption-based business works. So it's not outcome-based business. Not we don't charge per meeting booked, etc. Because, and the reason why we will never most likely do that is because we're not responsible or accountable for your PMF, so product market fit, or even channel fit. Like, I don't know whether cold email is a good channel for your business or not. It's like, so I always say, like, something like a cold email or something similar is very similar to Google Ads. So you're gonna go and spend some money in Google Ads. You'll optimize it and you'll try and see whether you're getting consistent return or not. And if you're getting consistent return, you're going to keep on spending money with Google. Same with something like this. If you never run any form of cold emails or agentic whatever, essentially any form of reach out, here's a cool tool, but I can't guarantee that you're going to get any replies back whatsoever. So we decided to charge for consumption. How many contacts you're processing, how many AI credits you're using, how many email verification credits you're using, stuff like that. On the infrastructure front, how many mailboxes you need. And typically one user needs many, many mailboxes because they're essentially spreading the load of emails. And it works really well. And I think the other thing as well that, what makes, a business grow really fast, we operate, very much on a land and expand strategy. So you initially start paying about $100. When you start seeing the return, right, you start scaling essentially, right? You start using more. Naturally, we get rewarded. And yes, customers can pay us anywhere between $500,000 in ARR to $1 million in ARR. That is also possible. And that's why consumption is like really nice from a kind of business standpoint. But that's because we're replacing sort of labor and the cost of labor from a CAC standpoint over to software. But the downside of using actually something like this, consumption-based pricing, if it doesn't work or the customer does not see any form of results, then they're going to start scaling down, right? So, but it also then incentivizes the product team and engineering team to really build a great product, because we will be penalized for a really bad product pretty much immediately, because customers will immediately start to reduce their usage. And that's why I think, consumption-based pricing is the pricing. Outcome-based pricing, not big believer in that, not always. In some cases it works. There's some examples of that, like Intercom.
You can't control the outcome, but you can control the consumption, I think. I think that's your analogy of like, hey, we're actually replacing labor here with AI.
Why we can do that. But typically, when you're using some sort of super app, or let's say like Salesforce, it's an example of like super app. There's just so much in Salesforce. Really, a typical rep only uses about 20% of the stuff that's in that huge Congress software. A typical sales rep is really just out of college, right, straight into the job. He's going to be clicking this particular part of the software and these particular buttons and nothing else. They're not going to use anything else. The rest is typically for the sales ops manager, growth manager. So this is how we've thought about ourselves. We want to kind of keep it clean and simple, and anything that's like, big, it feels like a module, let's just decouple it, let's just put it, kind of have it separate. But we also, the reason why we've done that, why we've been building all these forges, is we are building, based on the concept of what's called the software compound model. So if you think of companies like, again, Rippling or a bunch of other companies, you're ultimately selling these different pieces of software that solve different pain points for the same user. And a lot of users actually want to buy tech from one single vendor, because that means one support team, one invoice. It's kind of simpler. You don't also have to do a bunch of these integrations like data flows. Typically, there's good data flows between all these apps. And the other benefit is because my unit economics, of course, is much superior than the unit economics of point solutions. What that means for the customer is that I can reduce prices, right? So the tech stack is not as expensive as buying all these, 10 different point solutions, all of them raising a ton of money from VCs. So there's multiple different sort of advantages of why people are essentially craving for this. And there's a lot of data to back it up out there, either by Salesforce research reports or et cetera, where buyers are looking for consolidated stacks, something like Rippling. Rippling is a fantastic example in this space, and they've done a fantastic job. And arguably, in such a crowded category where you have hundreds of competitors, you're trying to figure out, how do I get to $100 million in ARR at least? How do you become $1 billion business? Well, if you're going to build a point solution, it's very unlikely you'll get to that. Very unlikely. So how you increase the likelihood of, hey, how can I make a customer buy multiple products, not just one? Because then you have a humongous sort of land and expand engine running, not just upsell, but with consumption, but also cross-sell, and all these products are also consumption-based, right? And that's really why we went down sort of this path of building these multiple products, because we want just the user to just buy one initial subscription before they kind of jump on to the next product, etc. And that's kind of our kind of thought process of essentially building the rippling of top of the funnel, and it's going well so far.
Nice. What kind of advice would you give to SaaS founders looking to scale as quickly as you guys did?
Invest in channels that do scale. This is essentially, naturally in the early days, you do things that don't scale, right? So you can read about it, on the web. And we've done a lot of that, I think, for, getting on board the first 100 customers. But then you need to figure out what actually scales for your business. And many things just don't scale at all. And some things just take too long. Like, for example, SEO just takes too long. So forget about stuff like SEO, etc. Like, you're wasting your time in the early days. I think, when it comes to kind of something like Outbound, Outbound generally, yes, it is email, because the reason why email is still a big thing is because the cost of acquisition is pretty low for email versus something like cold calling or spending money on ads. Then yes, I would definitely cold call. I would literally buy something like a parallel dialer and dial in parallel like 5 individuals and just sit all day and cold call my ICP. That's definitely the other thing I would do. And then, if you raised a lot of money from your VC, go and spend some money in Google Ads and bid on your competitors. This is like a red ocean strategy. But really, I always think about what are the things that I can do that really, really scales nicely? Because otherwise, you're going to hit a plateau like relatively quickly. But other companies have done a fantastic job, for example, in the early days, for example, like Clay.com, right, that we mentioned here. They've used essentially the influencer army, let's call it that way, the unofficial army of thousands, I think, of influencers that they have all around the world that became ultimately super ambassadors of their product, because it makes those agencies essentially look really good in front of the customers when they're using a Clay product. And a lot of these customers have never used all the sophisticated stuff that Clay, for example, offers. And some of these, some of them also get paid, etc. But essentially, there's like a triple win. Clay gets a lot from this, actually, from a revenue standpoint. Brand awareness, right? When agencies promote this product, agencies look really good in front of the customers. The customer looks at the stuff and says, yeah, that's exactly what I need. So there's that huge triple win, And so creating these sort of triple win moments, whatever, essentially that's what you should be going after. This is how we think.
What's a triple win? What is that concept? What's the triple win? What is that?
So meaning, let's say in this example, the vendor gets something out of this. So Clay gets, by working with these influencers, they get a lot of visibility, because a lot of these Clay agencies, they do a ton of content, for example, LinkedIn, etc. That's all free content for Clay. Like advertising Clay as a product, right? So Clay gets a lot of visibility, gets naturally more subscriptions, more revenue from that. But what Clay agencies get, they get affiliate revenue as an example, right, by promoting Clay, but also it makes them look good in front of their end customers. And then the customer themselves, the reason why they're winning from all of that is because that's exactly what they need. They need the sophisticated flows in Clay. They need these super cool emails, what they do. And they can't do it themselves, so they do need that Clay agency to do it for them. So that's an example of what works, really well. And some of that can be replicated also in other spaces, right? So what I'm trying to say is, like, something like this is also very scalable, right? Very unusual, but very, very scalable. So I would definitely look at, something like this. So essentially scaling through influencer, let's call it marketing, or through these sort of programs. But always think about, does it really scale? And if it doesn't, then probably don't do it, because...
And how do you know when it's not scaling? Is it just that the customer acquisition cost, the CAC, is just rising way too fast as you kind of turn up the volume of the spend in that channel? Is it as simple as that? It's just like, you're just not going to break even fast enough in that channel.
So different startups will measure it differently. So I'll give you an example. Let's say with YouTube in our case, right? I was always a big believer that YouTube is the place where our ICP hangs out. They always have some questions how to improve the availability, how to build infrastructure, etc. And YouTube, is the second largest search engine in the world after Google, right? So this is where we started in the very, very early days. Like I mentioned, the guy that we hired for YouTube is to really do a lot of great videos on different topics, how to, on this and that, how to do this and that and that. And in the early days, we didn't see that many leads coming from YouTube, but then later on, it just kicked in. So we're getting more and more subscribers, more and more people watching the videos. And today, YouTube is definitely one of our key channels for customer acquisition. And yes, it does take some time, but you can also use these different videos in a lot of different ways. And YouTube does scale quite nicely. You just have to keep on doing all these videos. It's a bit like SEO essentially, right? But it's not as saturated. YouTube is not as saturated as SEO game. So with SEO, naturally, there have been so many tools out there doing a lot of different pieces of content, whether it's HubSpot or a bunch of other older sort of softwares that have been talking about cold email and how to do XYZ. So it's very difficult to rank in Google, but it's still relatively easy, at least in our space, to rank for something that has to do with cold emailing, generating pipeline, etc. in YouTube. So you also have to think from a standpoint of, okay, yes, you can look at it from a CAC standpoint, but I look at it like, okay, where it's easy to compete and where it's hard to compete. So hard to compete, I deprioritize that as much as I can. And wherever it's easy to compete and wherever you can still, go on for years and years and years, something like YouTube, that's where you should plow ahead. You should definitely hire literally a guy full-time just doing videos and really great videos, right? Because that's going to be sitting there for years and years and years. And so, yeah, that's another thing that works sort of, really well.
Interesting. Why don't we kind of wrap up with a rapid fire?
Yeah, go.
What's the biggest mistake people make in cold email outreach?
They send the same template to everybody. Still happens a lot. And we're going to see the death of templates. We're already seeing that, by the way. And the reason why we're going to see the death of templates is because Google and Microsoft use their own models to associate essentially spam reports with static content. So essentially, templates are dying.
Interesting. Does spin tax get around that for now? And are they kind of cutting down on that too, kind of the variations of the template?
That's becoming less and less effective because LLMs are becoming smarter and smarter. So where we're headed in the world is essentially getting to a world where every email in cold email is unique when it's actually being sent out. So that means it will be computed by something like DeepSeek, very cheap.
Yeah, spam filters will get better as our cold outreach gets better. What's the best subject line formula that's working right now? Or is that just kind of AI generated?
AI generated works really well. So essentially, you're using the data of the buyer's data. Let's say something from LinkedIn, and you're putting that in the subject line programmatically, and tying that in with some sort of pain that you're solving for the prospect. Works pretty well. But also kind of basic stuff like, quick question still works. I know it's been overused massively, but still works. But I think the other one that really works and can be done nicely is essentially my first name and your first name, right? So you're putting that into subject line. That also works. Typically, this means like, implies sort of a meeting or we want to meet, right? So,
If you had to sell a product without email, what channel would you use?
Cold calling.
Love it. What's one outdated sales tactic that needs to die?
Sending templates.
What's an AI tool besides Salesforge that every salesperson should be using?
Clay.com.
What's more important, the first line of an email or the call to action?
First line, because sometimes they'll not read the rest of the email. And then you're never going to get to call to action.
Right. What's the biggest regulatory change coming that sales teams aren't ready for?
I think there's more regulatory change that's coming to AI agents.
If you could go back to day one at Salesforge, what's one thing you would do differently?
One thing that I would do differently, maybe I wouldn't raise any money. And that would be
nice. So why not?
Because that was the other option. We were always kind of debating, should we bootstrap or should we raise? And we ended up raising. No, that would be just the alternative path, essentially, to Salesforce. We maybe just grow slower, but we would just be bootstrap.
Yeah, I think it depends on the terminal size of the market, how competitive it is, and how fast you need to move. I've had lots of friends that bootstrapped and regretted it. They're like, I think if I raised money, I could have went faster and captured the market faster, and I'd have 50% of $1 billion company instead of 100% of a $20 million company.
Yes.
And so that I think you have to think about what's your goal? Do you want to get big? Do you want to capture the market? And if not, then that's fine. Just have a lifestyle business, and you can crank out a nice little living.
It's just the alternative path of just growing slower and just owning 100% of the business. But I'm the other reason why we chose the VC path is where they go big or go home team. We want to go big or go home, so this is the VC path.
And your vision's big too. I think your vision's big enough for a venture scale. And every time there's a new technology that comes along, like AI, AI has been around for a while, but really like large language models, let's call it, agents, there's this opportunity to reimagine how things are done, right? And this is almost like a once in a generation opportunity.
Yes.
Not since the heydays of the internet, the 2000s, maybe early 2010s, have we really reimagined how sales and marketing works? And so I think we're kind of living through that right now, which is really exciting. What's the biggest trend in outbound sales no one's talking about yet?
Biggest trend that nobody's talking about. Oh, yes, deepfakes are coming. So
Ooh,
we
yeah.
saw the first wave, right? So changing text copy, right? So next wave, voice AI agents. And this year we're gonna see video.
Well,
Possible.
already, I mean, I could use AI to generate an avatar of myself, plug it into, a 15-second video, plug it into every LinkedIn message, and it looks like I custom recorded a video for you, but it's just AI.
Yeah,
I've literally talked to companies that do that.
We're gonna get to a place where it's really indistinguishable.
Right.
I think today you can still see, you still see that eye flickering or whatever, right? So you're like, it's a deep fake, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you're gonna get it later this year to a stage where you take your voice, take your face, and that's it. It will be indistinguishable. So
Yeah. I mean, it's already good enough right now where I could generate a whole podcast episode using some of the generative AI. Like I could take all my past hundreds and hundreds of hours of podcast recordings and train an AI to create a podcast on any topic. It could just be me talking about whatever I told the AI to talk about with whomever I chose, whatever famous figure, right?
Yeah, but I
brings
think
up also
the tech will improve massively. I think everything has to do with video. Text is solid.
Yeah.
I think the final frontier is video, and that's this year, and that's it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, an example product of that is a sales deepfake. You're using that for outreach, and it'll look like a video that you did. But no, it was literally within a few seconds, you computed thousands of videos that are uniquely crafted for each and every individual. Again, using their LinkedIn data, whatever website data. That's where we're headed to. So we're going to see
kind of like Minority Report. Yeah. If you remember that movie, Minority Report, He's walking through like the subway and all the ads are completely targeted towards him. Well, how can folks interested in getting in touch with you and Salesforge find you online?
Just find me on LinkedIn, I think, like everybody else does. So yeah, that's the easiest way.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Brian. Cheers.